Hey, friend.
Hey, girl. Hey.
How you doing?
I am feeling a little sleepy right now,
Mm.
but I don't need any more caffeine. So I just feel like I need to be wrapped in a warm blanket and put to bed.
Okay, well, we can do that. I
I
mean,
would love
a
that.
short nap.
Okay. I don't want to mess up my makeup.
Can you nap in makeup? I can't.
No, absolutely not.
Oh,
I'm not
so
going
then
to
you
try
can't
it.
nap.
I cannot nap. Tonight is our supper club, as we have already said in a previous episode. And so we got things to do. We got big business to handle, and I'm looking forward to it. What about
Yeah.
you?
I feel really grateful that these last 48 hours have been the brightest for me since the election. And it's
Yeah.
because there have been multiple things that I've had to look forward to. And so it's a good
Mhm.
reminder to me to kind of plan for joy.
Okay. Plan for joy. I hope you all have taken heed to that message that we are trying to share and inspire across all of our platforms.
So, what's our episode on today? I'm excited to talk to you about this if you're open to it.
Speaking about planning for joy.
Yeah.
The episode is about how to, number one, physically stay safe, but I think also mentally stay
Mhm.
safe and healthy and whole when parts of who you are being targeted. Specifically by MAGA Republicans in this case. But I think this really goes beyond that,
Mhm.
right? It can be the church or certain institutions that you find yourself a part of. It might be at work, God forbid, for sure. But if you just feel like whoever you are right now is under attack, or you cannot show up in a way that is 100% authentic, we want to talk about how we hold space for that, how we push back against that, but most importantly, how we maintain our safety and our security during this time. Because we got a long 4 years and possibly beyond ahead of us.
Yeah. And I really like how you framed it kind of in two buckets, but that merge into one, right? Because there's no physical safety without mental emotional safety, and there's no mental emotional safety without physical safety.
Mhm.
And so for some of us, our particular identities might not be targeted, but we do feel attacked either through our phone or because of our political persuasions
That's a good
or
point.
our feelings of sisterhood and community that with loved ones whose identities are being targeted,
Mhm.
or for the parents who are listening and viewing if you have children.
Yeah. And I just want to say that this is real. I know many people in our audience know that for sure, but I'm just thinking about what was happening in Springfield, Ohio to Haitian immigrants and how adults and children were being attacked at places like schools and playgrounds,
Mhm.
places that should be the community staples of safety. And so when we say this or we have this conversation today, we're not attempting to like fear monger. This is a real feeling, and there are consequences to what people are saying and how they feel. And whether it is the attacks on FEMA workers as a result of MAGA Republicans' conspiracy theories, we talked about that in an episode, or it's actually individual acts of violence. My fear is that they are only going to be heightened because people now have the safety of their community to hide behind.
And I think there's also kind of been maybe a reluctant acceptance of diversity of thought, gender, race, identity in many kind of mixed communities. And people maybe weren't saying things because they knew it wouldn't be socially acceptable,
Mhm.
even if they felt it.
Yeah.
And now they can say it and act on it in a way where they won't have to be held accountable.
It's the last part that they won't have to be held accountable. And we already live in a day and age of state-sanctioned violence and anti-Black racism. And so that is very, very real. And with the anti-immigrant sentiments being ratcheted up, certain types of immigrants, because I think Usha in her maybe community or her immediate family at least is exempt from some of that. Um, is it Usha or Usha? I just always say it
It's
wrong.
not Usher.
I want to be like Usha,
Usher,
Usha, Usha.
Usher. Wait, what if there was a meme going around of Usha Vance really being Usher? Like, Usher, do you have abs of steel?
It would actually be what may be a highlight of a very dark administration. But Usha is not Usha.
Mm-mm.
Or Ursher, as some call him. Usha is vice president to be, vice president elect Vance's wife. And so, again, anti immigrant sentiment rests on the backs of particular types of immigrants because Melania is also a fucking immigrant. Okay. So let's just get clear on that. And so if you are part of those communities or you are standing in allyship to those communities, we want to talk once again, what that looks like. So I can say for me to start off, that the first thing my partner and I thought about when we woke up to the news of a Trump presidency and a MAGA Republican trifecta was what that meant for us and our ability to get married, what that means for our ability to travel safely and be able to hold hands and not have a fear for our safety. I have femme privilege, which I talked about on the podcast before, but I have been with her where she called a Uber and the Uber saw her and drove off. Where she went to go reach for, and then she knocked on the window and the Uber shook his head and rode off. Because he assumed she was a man or because he was just racist. It does not matter. But the reality is masculine presenting women, masculine Black bodies face a particular type of anti-Black racism. And those things I am fearful about. And then I have a little brother who is trans, and he's not so little anymore, but he will always be my baby. And and he's also in a southern state in North Carolina. And so these types of things have me thinking about physical safety and also how we prepare ourselves from any mental harms that will come from this time.
Yeah. For me, I've thought about similar things, particularly as it relates to you, and as it relates to my children. I have a daughter who is constantly misgendered, um, and how I feel a different level of like fierce protectiveness over her,
Mhm.
and like I don't think I would feel comfortable taking her to Florida.
That's real talk.
And like, what does that mean? Like, do I actually believe that? And yeah,
Because we don't want to find out the hard way.
like I don't need her to be exposed to homophobic vitriol.
Mhm.
That's not what I want for her. So I think about that. I thought a lot about your wedding. I had a dream. I told you this, but it's so funny. It's not funny, it's horrifying. I had a dream that I got my gun license so I could be security at your wedding.
Not you showed up like I got the glizzy on me. I got the glizzy in my Bottega bag. So who won it? I appreciate that.
But like I'm like the least violent person,
You are.
and I deeply believe in pacifism. And so this idea of like feeling this urge to protect, I feel very, very strongly.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that, friend. We don't need you to carry a gun though. We don't want that. We want you to sit in other forms of activism.
No, but I think like when I woke up and I was like, really kind of sifting through it, I wouldn't get a gun, but it's just made me so angry that this is something you even have to consider as you're entering this phase of your life.
Yeah, yeah. That's real. And I don't know that an end to, let's say, same-sex marriages can happen in 4 years, but I don't know that we saw an end to Roe versus Wade, right? I don't know what it takes to get there. What I do know, however, is that there are smaller types of like chips and erosions of a particular right. And what it starts is so and so business doesn't have to create a wedding cake for a same sex couple. So and so doesn't have to allow the wedding reception, or they don't have to, the venue can't be used for a trans child's birthday party, right? Those types of things happen where, again, the people on the other side who are filled with hatred have political and legal cover to discriminate
Based on religion.
based upon religion. Hobby Lobby case.
Mm.
And then it just gets worse and worse. It is a snowball. And it goes back to how the other side, as I've said before, has a plan and a movement that is years and years and generations at times beyond ours. I heard someone talking about recently the Heritage Foundation and how long they have existed in some form prior to Project 2025.
Yeah. I had no idea either until, yeah. They've been in existence for a long time.
For a long time, people. For a long time. This is something that, unless you were tapped in, you just maybe didn't know about. But it does not mean that their movement has not been working behind the scenes for a very long time. It is an iceberg. This truly is the tip. But under the water has been all this work for decades. And so it makes me fearful of also just the people that I am around, because it's so interesting. You said this to me before, how I am for a very long time in my life, I have been accustomed to being one of a few Black people in the space.
Mm.
And because it has been my experience, to some degree, I am immune to it. As Black people, most of us always walk into a space and we're like, oh, I'm the only Black person. But then my next thought is, let me sit down, dirty martini, extra dirty, extra cold. Because I'm here now. Now, because I am so hyper vigilant and aware, depending on my location, I would turn around and walk the fuck out. Especially if my partner was with me, especially if my trans brother was with me. I would be even more conscious and actually feel like I have to act on a fear that I now have. And it's no better way for me to explain that.
Yeah. So I think kind of like the physical safety or the geographical safety or the environmental safety is a real one, that I think many of us took for granted, and certainly wasn't the case for everyone, but
Yeah.
many of us
real.
took for granted over the last couple years, and now are thinking about it in a different way. But what else are you doing to keep yourself sane and whole?
So organizing, building community, I think that's really important. One of the benefits of organizing on a community level, whether it be a mutual aid campaign, whether it be helping a local elected official get into office or an incumbent race, I think is that you feel empowered and you are also around like-minded people. We talked a bit in a previous episode about joining protests and marches, and I do think that that is something that has a role that's really important. I mean, I participated in the Gender Liberation March at the end of the summer or maybe early fall. I can't remember. It was in September. And there was a part of the march that we ended technically in front of the Heritage Foundation, and they put on like ballroom music, and all of these queer and trans people started voguing in front of Heritage Foundation. And it was a literal fuck you, but it was also such a beautiful community, and all of the activists and the people who had worked together closely to make that moment happen. I felt everyone there should be proud. Everyone should feel like we created this space for us, by us. And just us being in community these days can be an act of resistance. And so getting into community is something that has made me feel safer. And we know there's safety in numbers.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
I think staying well. So staying like mentally well and rested, but also physically well kind of
Mhm.
makes me feel safer. I don't, that could just be in my head, right? But this idea of you can't give if you have nothing to give.
That shit is real, dog.
And so, okay, like these next 4 years are going to be hard. How are you going to stay well? How are you going to stay focused? and do the things that are important to you, including parenting and partnering and working and being a daughter and being a friend and, taking care of my home and all those things that are important to me. I want to do them with energy. I don't want to be passively like floating through the next 4 years.
That's real. So just a mindfulness, I think is really important as well.
And knowing that it's going to be hard. I think that's also just admitting like it's going to be hard. So like what am I putting into my schedule? I can use specific examples from my own life, but if that's helpful for people. But for example, I have now scheduled for the next 7 weeks. I'm taking a yoga class every Friday afternoon.
I love it. Do you still do your 5 a.m. yoga?
No, I'm too
Oh,
old.
sorry.
I need my sleep.
Now you feel me.
No, I don't. Maybe again, but not right now, not during this
Okay.
phase. But so like that's something that I have on my calendar
Yeah.
in a space that feels like I love so much with one of my favorite teachers. We have that time. Thinking about, you know, there's some weeks that I have therapy, but there are many weeks that I don't. So on the weeks that I don't, what else am I doing? And just being mindful about it because
Yeah.
and not feel and I don't want to be reactive like I'm so upset. Why am I so upset? Why am I so stressed? Why am I so angry? Why am I so not that those feelings are bad. It's just like getting ahead of some of them.
Yeah. I that's important because I worry a lot.
I do too.
Yeah, I worry a lot for my brother. I worry a lot for my trans friends. I have one friend who she and her partner were trying to get pregnant and trying really hard to be parents. And I don't know what any of that is going to look like. And it was already bad enough for her to where she got off social media prior to the election because she was like, number one, I cannot see the transphobia, but I also cannot be a recipient of the
Mm,
transphobia. And so now here we are, and all of those things are likely just going to ratchet up. Um, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to make certain things MAGA Republicans issues solely
mm,
because transphobia don't have a political party.
mm.
Homophobia don't have a political party. Racism don't have a political party. And now I think it makes us feel better, but that shit ain't fucking true. And I think we need to confront that within our own spaces, our churches, our communities, places where our schools, our places where we reside. We have work to do as well.
I think that's so important. And I also think that the work is so much bigger than just the two-party system.
Mhm.
I think it's important for us, particularly in this space, to talk about technology and what does
Okay,
technological safety look like.
for sure.
Obviously, that's not going to look the same for all of us, but I think that example of your friend who just got off social media for a time is really powerful.
Yeah, and there's also just benefits to that for us all, I think, to some degree.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and even if it's not off every single platform, just being mindful of the digital spaces that we engage in. I mean, if we think about it, we don't go to physical spaces that, well, I hope we don't go, we think more critically about going to physical spaces that bring us harm or some level of upset. But we don't think that way about what's coming down our timelines. Largely because we feel like we can't control
Well,
it.
also, we like to peep.
Yeah, now that is true. That's
I
some
mean,
real
I'm not going to
shit.
lie,
Yeah,
right? We want to see how other people
it's
live.
the voyeurism.
Yeah, we want to see how other people, I don't know, are in relationship, parent, eat, where they live, what their house looks like, what they wear. We don't necessarily wanna be in community with them, but, like, yeah, I'd like to see, like, a big suburban house in Texas and what that looks like.
Yeah, exactly. This is how social media can be so harmful, friend. I feel like we're slowly becoming the geriatric grand millennials that are like, that damn internet.
I mean, sure.
Margo was like, eh.
I've always said that.
But girl, I realized last night that I had been watching this woman's content who is a fucking trad wife. Did I tell you about this?
No.
Bitch. So, yes, I've been red pilled. This woman named Nara Smith, do you know her?
I think I know who you're talking about. She's like very lithe and tall. She just had a baby.
Lithe is
She
such a good word.
she like is beautiful. I mean, gorgeous, and like has like very like monochromatic home decor that match her outfits that are like robes. And she's like cooking elaborate meals for her husband and her children, like including bread. But she's also Korean, I think, or half Asian because she makes like really yummy Asian dishes.
Oh, I didn't know this. Well, I know, I think people assumed, and I don't know if she's ever addressed this, that she is half black.
Yes,
Okay. All right.
I think.
This is what folks assume. You all sound off below. Clearly, this is part of pop culture that we are not experts in. However, all I know is she came down my timeline one day saying, first you add a persimmon, and then you add cardamom, and then you stir, right? And she's dressed impeccably. She looks like a fashion model. She's beautiful in the face. So I'm just like, oh, this is interesting content. I'm seeing it as a creator. But it keeps coming down my fucking timeline because now I've engaged with the content. Only for me to see a storm happening on TikTok where people are responding to her because evidently her husband voted for Trump. And people are enraged because they're like, this woman, for all purposes in this country, is seen as black. And your children are seen as biracial, multiracial. So again, this conversation about how are you voting against the interests of either yourself, your family,
Or your
etc.
children, yeah.
And then I started to really go back and watch some of her content. And I was like, oh, I misunderstood her entire platform. Of course. Did you get that from the beginning that she was a trad wife?
Yeah.
Missed it, dog.
But I think because I was confused. And so I kind of went, I didn't see her on TikTok. I saw her on Instagram.
This is why we're fucking losing. Because they are giving us the medicine with the honey. My 42-year-old black ass, educated, aware, who dissects these issues with you, other spaces, real spaces, did not realize I had been watching a content creator who falls in alignment with the conservative trad wife movement. That doesn't mean that all conservative values are bad. As I say that, probably, but probably. But it doesn't mean that I would believe every person who holds those values is a bad person, is what I'm trying to say. But I did not connect those things, Margo.
So I think when we talk about digital safety, we have to talk about this, right? Because what do we do? For example, you're interested in wellness content and you're like, ooh, this is an interesting recipe. Or yeah, like I'm not drinking. I'd like some mocktails or adaptogens. Or, oh, you have a flower garden. I like to garden. Oh, you have chickens. Cool. I like organic chickens. Oh, you don't vaccinate your kids. Oh, you don't take medicine. Oh, oh, and there have been, that's how I have been red pilled, right? Where it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then you're like, right, this is part of the problem and part of the solution at the same time.
Precious.
And so there's no issue in watching that woman's content.
None.
She's nice to look at. Her kitchen's beautiful. Her kids are really cute. She makes really good food. It feels a little bit like AMDR.
ASMR. And I think that's why she has millions of followers, because it gives ASMR. I don't know why she's talking like that.
Right. So she's like talking like.
And
she
sounds
slow.
like if Elizabeth Holmes and Martha Stewart had a baby.
Yeah, it's like slow and it's like lots of close-ups to her nails and it's like sexual kind of.
It's
just
weird.
Different.
It's different.
So one could argue it's art. Okay. And so there's nothing inherently wrong about watching something that is different.
I agree.
But then is art always political? Right? Is watching, engaging, supporting?
Because let's just be clear here. We're talking about a woman who's 23 years old and living Creating recipes and living a life that one can assume is completely and wholly consuming of her entire identity. And that is what this trad wife movement is about, right? It is being a traditional wife, upholding particular gendered norms. I never see him in the kitchen with her cooking a goddamn thing. I would assume that there's a level of caretaking of the children as well, the majority of which that she is responsible for. People who watch her content know a lot more than I do on a consistent basis. All I'm saying is it is an entry point to something that can get very scary, very different, especially when it
Very
comes down.
quickly.
Very quickly, especially when it comes down to how it can indoctrinate young women. This woman is 23 years
Are you
old.
sure?
Yeah, I saw her like with the birthday cake that said for my 23rd birthday. Yeah, and blowing out the candles. So I think that technology in media is a space where, especially right now, we have to be even more careful because these algorithms want to put us in a chokehold.
So that's what I forget who said it on our live, but it's like the solution and the problem.
Yeah.
Because we shouldn't be seeing this. We shouldn't be letting this rot our brains, but if we don't see it, we don't know what's happening.
And we also
Like, we
can't use
didn't-
these same tools.
Right. And like the trad wife movement didn't start last year,
Very true.
right?
Very
It started, I mean, it has been in existence for a long time, but like the trad wife identity really through YouTube really started like 9 years ago, but no one paid attention.
I didn't know that. It's true, and it's so funny you said that because now it has evolved to this palatable sexiness that young people I can imagine are like, oh my God, I'd let me go home, have 2 babies. Her husband is fucking fine. Have this very attractive husband who, and vote for Donald Trump. That's gonna solve all my problems.
How do you know? I'm just interested now. How do we know he voted for Donald Trump?
So what happened was when Trump won, so this is on Reddit. From my understanding, when Trump won, he shared or retweeted a post that said, "We won." And someone found it, posted it on Reddit. People had a lot of thoughts, and people are assuming that it is true. Thank you for asking me to clarify. People are assuming that it's true because neither she nor he have denied it. And also, if you look at their lifestyles closely, and that's where I had to take a step back, it is really supporting conservative values.
Right? It's like Ballerina Farm too.
It is 100% a gendered experience. 100%. So I don't want to make this about them. I just think that when you talked about technology, it was the perfect example of how we can get sucked into some of these platforms unknowingly. And that happens to you and I even.
Totally. So being mindful, I think that goes back. So if it's taking breaks from social media, if it's blocking, if it's only letting yourself, a certain number of minutes a day, or being really specific about what you're looking for when you are online.
I love that. Health and wellness, going back to your point before, I think really is another thing that isn't really important about safety, especially when it is in community. My partner is a big bike rider. I tried to get into it. Wasn't quite my thing, but I can see how bike riding groups, your running group, actually being physically in spaces that are dedicated to health and wellness with people could feel really good right now. And
also, but you have to be careful because they also can skew sometimes.
What you talking about?
Oh, doing things that you love in community is great.
Yeah.
But health and wellness communities, depending on which community you are accessing,
I see what you're saying.
can move in certain directions that could have a political leaning that you don't feel safe in.
Okay, thank you for that. This is an area that you are much, much more tapped into than I am, for sure.
Well, I mean, I think this is kind of the conundrum, right? That we have a healthcare system in this country under both former President Trump and current President Biden and to be President-elect Trump, or would have been under Kamala Vice President Harris, that is very sick. And people have gone and looked for alternative ways to support their health and found a lot of success and blame the American healthcare system and some of the practices, big farm, big ag, and the quality of our food and food deserts and over medication and not enough sunlight and all of these things that could be true on the government.
Okay.
And so it is just, again, this kind of fine line that we walk where two things can be true at once, right? We can do better, and vaccines are really important for herd immunity. Anyway, sorry, I got off a little bit on my tangent there.
No, but thank you for that, because we need those reminders, because it goes back to the spaces that we are consuming content and how we can be red pilled, how we can find ourselves in a vortex. So before we know it, we're saying Wayfair has the body parts of children in our credenza.
Or the pizza shop is that Hillary Clinton's in the basement of a pizza shop having sex with children.
For her and drinking their blood as part of the Illuminati. Margo, these are real things that some of these people have said.
Sometimes I get so sad, Tashira, about the state of the world. And then sometimes I really think it's a joke.
Humans are raggedy, bruh. I'm telling you. I look at my dog Pooks's life and I'm like, if reincarnation is real, there's something about the animal kingdom that they got that shit right. But goddamn it, humans, we ain't got it to give. We are just going to, I hate to have these Darwinian conversations on the podcast all the time, Margo, but I'm just like, is anybody else seeing how raggedy people are right now?
It's so ludicrous.
It is horrible.
Okay.
So before we go, we want to really uplift our trans community here in an effort to be allies and co-conspirators, especially because we know that there are physical safety threats that cannot be underscored enough. We cannot say this loudly enough, and we have a responsibility as a community, as a people, to ensure the safety of our loved ones in a real way. So please make sure you are standing in intercession, you are standing in the gap, you are being an active bystander if you are witnessing any threats or harms that are coming to our communities. But in the meantime, I really implore us and also our trans community members to know a bit more about your legal rights if necessary. Find out about places to receive community support. One of the things that I'm really concerned about is a lack of access to gender affirming care. And or an outright ban on it for young people of a certain age, to where your parents cannot even opt in. Those things are real concerns.
But cue the question, do you think they'll stop birth control pills for teenage girls?
Absolutely not.
So, all of this is so inconsistent, the arguments, right? We're talking about hormone suppression. What's a birth control pill?
Hormone suppression. Absolutely. And then we get down to just like very real self-defense training and understanding how to protect ourselves and, once again, to protect our loved ones. We hope some of those resources are helpful. Please sound off below if there are other things that we should be keeping in mind to a greater specificity. Again, I think locally, creating safe spaces, joining safe spaces, groups like Smile, for example, in DC, that supports queer and trans youth. These programs are more vital now than ever before. And if you cannot create, want to participate, send your money, write a check.
Absolutely. Today's episode is sponsored by Whoop.
Whoop, there it is.
I think is appropriate because we have to stay safe, stay hydrated, stay rested.
Period.
And stay active. Okay, some people use the Whoop for activity. I use it for sleep. Join.whoop.com/justuspod to join our team and keep well.
Tell us some of the benefits that you found since you've started using your Whoop.
Actually, for me, I have been able to, I've always struggled with my sleep. I know that's hard for people on this podcast to believe, although I'm in a very good sleep rhythm right now. But for me, actually, it's been really helpful because nights where I don't sleep well, I actually sleep better than I think I do.
Okay.
So emotionally, it's like I wake up and I'm so tired and I look at my Whoop and it's like, oh, well, I did sleep 5.5 hours or 6 hours. And I would have thought I slept 2 hours. So, data isn't everything, but data is helpful.
Especially when it comes down to our body. So thank you for being a sponsor of the podcast. You all, we are so appreciative of you for supporting the brands that support us. Make sure you go and you take a look at Whoop. So, Margo, next year, if you're watching to the time that we are filming and recording, then that means in early 2025, we are going back to where it started, which is seasonal drops, right?
Yes. So, sorry. We are. We are kind of changing it up just slightly, where we will be having probably 12 episode seasons. So we'll have a winter season, a spring season, a summer season, and a fall season with some gaps in between, though those will be interspersed with YouTube lives and some Zoom content.
Absolutely. And also live events. So it's a couple things that going back to seasons help us to do. Number one, target content and ensure that we are giving you high quality content as much as possible. It helps with our very finite resources as well to be transparent, to ensure that we are moving strategically for the podcast and allowing for it to grow. The other thing it does is it gives us a bit of a break and reprieve so that we can get in community with you. If we are on a very high rate filming schedule, it doesn't leave us a lot of time to have in-person events.
No, so we had a big in-person event in September. We have one now in November. We're going to have another big one in Baltimore in February, and then a retreat in New York in August. So the seasons will allow us to really focus and make those experiences even better.
Yep.
Which also leads us to where you will be able to find us on a weekly basis if you aren't listening or viewing the podcast. And we are starting in the new year a Substack where there will be weekly drops, including all the content that we love. So political content, social justice content, wellness content, health content, friendship content, fashion content, skin care, all the things that make us and this community thrive.
A repository of resources for those of us at a big age.
Woo!
Ha! Shondo.
Maybe that's the tagline.
I love that. Although I think repository is probably not a word that people, I don't know. We'll beta test it. What y'all feel about it? Let us know.
But what did we call it yesterday that I loved?
Did we say it was the cut for big age?
The big age cut. But we probably can't use the cut, right?
Yeah, no. We're going to get sued. Help us with the tagline, people. Give us your feedback. The point is that we want to be digging deep, multi-platformed.
Okay, digging deep, multi-platform. Love that. What about joy as resistance?
Okay, we like that because we want to keep that theme going as well all of 2025.
Okay, we need to keep thinking.
We'll get back to you. But just know that everything you need to know about where we're headed is going to be down in the description box. Make sure you are part of our newsletter community as well. That is going to migrate to Substack. So don't worry. Just make sure you have signed up. And we will keep you posted on what is next, what's coming down the pipeline for Justice.
Thanks all.
Thanks for listening to Justice. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to learn more about our podcast, be sure to check us out on our website at justicepodcast.com. You can also reach out to us there if you want to be featured on the show or if you have a business or a product that you think would be a good fit for our audience. Thanks again for listening.